you want to figure out what the IRS says you can pay, okay? I say this all the time. Your definition of broke is not the IRS definition of broke. For example, if you have credit card bills that you have to pay monthly, the IRS is going to look at that and say, okay, you didn't manage your spending well. However, if you have credit card bills that you have to pay each month because you paid living expenses with those, let's say groceries, maybe you did a cash advance to take care of your electricity, your rent or mortgage, then we can take that into consideration when negotiating with the IRS.
Welcome to the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. Are you behind on taxes? Is the IRS threatening you or your business? Are you overwhelmed and confused about how to resolve your tax issues? Let's join Timalyn as she explains your options and how she may be able to help. Timalyn Bowens is America's favorite EA.
Hey family, welcome to episode 22. I am always excited, but this topic right here that we're going to talk about is one near and dear to my heart because I'm passionate about helping you as the taxpayer to face your fear, the IRS. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about what to do if you can't pay your tax bill. Okay? Now, last episode, 21, we talked about estimated tax payments. So we kind of already know why you're here. If you haven't listened to episode 21 yet, let me just give a very quick recap. The majority of people that I work with are first-generation entrepreneurs. And if you have the privilege of working with me one-on-one, you probably owe to the tune of $100,000 or more. I hope that didn't make you faint if you don't owe that much. But when interviewing these clients, the number one thing that they don't do that gets them in this situation is not paying their estimated tax payments. For my W-2 employees, they have taxes withheld from their paycheck by an employer. But sometimes if they have rental properties, if they have gains from stock sales, different property sales, they also should have made estimated tax payments and they can still end up in the same situation. So if right now, maybe you are stuck with, I can't pay the tax bill, but want to know how you got here, go check out episode 21 about estimated tax payments. All right. But if you're listening to this episode, let's get right into the meat of why we're here right now. First things first, if you're not new to me, you've heard me say, I need you to stop and breathe. Okay. Analysis paralysis will add penalties onto this bill that you cannot pay. The last thing we want to do is the ostrich approach, where you stick your head in the sand. What you want to make sure you do is file the tax return on time. I cannot tell you, literally, cannot count the times, can't even come up with a number off the top of my head, how many times I have seen a taxpayer owe the IRS and then they just disappear. They do not file the tax return. That is the worst mistake that you can make when you find out that you owe the IRS not filing the return. Because here's what happens. When you do finally file the return, you're going to be hit with failure to file penalties, which can be up to 25% of the tax that you owe if you're a single member LLC or a corporation. If you're a partnership or an S corporation, you're going to get hit with a penalty for each partner or shareholder for each month that it's late. This is a penalty that can completely be avoided just by you filing on time. Now, if that's already you and you want to learn more about those failure to file penalties and how you can get those penalties removed, you can check out a previous episode where I walk you through first-time penalty abatement, which is where you can get those penalties removed if you're a first-time offender, and then reasonable cause. All right, so if you're not a first-time offender, there may still be a way where you can get those penalties removed. So after we file the return on time, we're going to investigate. The first part of the investigation, you want to ask yourself, why do you owe? So again, episode 21 with the estimated tax payments, it's very likely your estimated tax payments weren't made, or if you're a W-2 employee, that your withholding is off. If you are unsure about how to fill out your W-4, you can check out my YouTube channel, which you can find me under America's Favorite EA, and I actually have a technical training where I walk you through how to fill out the W-4 if you're single, if you're head of household, and even if you're married filing jointly. So make sure that if your withholding was off last year, you go check out the YouTube channel now. Go ahead and print out a W-4 so you can fill it out along with me. All right? We want to make sure that we have that corrected before we go any further so you don't keep running into the same problem year after year after year. After we figure out why you owe, we want to investigate and see, is there a reason that will be reasonable to the IRS as to why you did not make your payments timely? Is there a reason that the IRS will accept for why you did not file on time? Now, if you're unsure of what these reasons are, you want to check out again the podcast episode where I talk about the penalties, because I'll walk you through some of the acceptable reasons that the IRS has where you can get these penalties removed. Because remember, negotiating these taxes is definitely a privilege, not a right. But when you know what you're doing when you go in there, the IRS will remove penalties and retroactively interest. But you just have to know what you're doing when you go in to talk with them. They are willing to have the conversation if you do the next step, and that is stay tax compliant. Tax compliance is one of the main things that I see taxpayers mess up. We will have a perfect deal and arrangement set up with the IRS, and then the next year, the taxpayer doesn't file their return on time. Guess what happens? The IRS is going to take that deal off the table. Or, check this out. We have a deal with the IRS, the returns are filed on time, but the taxpayer doesn't keep making their estimated tax payments, or they don't have enough withholding, so the next year they owe again. Guess what happens? The IRS takes that deal off the table. There are two parts to tax compliance. It's filing returns on time and also making sure that you don't keep owing. Now, look, I've already promoted the YouTube channel, but in all seriousness, I believe it was February 6th. I did a live video on my YouTube channel, or if you're following me on Facebook or LinkedIn, you can also find it on what tax compliance is. So I go into more detail about that there. But if you can't pay your tax bill, before you have the audacity to try to negotiate with the IRS, you need to make sure the return is filed. Please file it on time to help yourself. Investigate to see what you actually owe. Then stay tax compliant. The last step, you want to figure out what the IRS says you can pay. Okay? I say this all the time. Your definition of broke is not the IRS definition of broke. For example, if you have credit card bills that you have to pay monthly, the IRS is going to look at that and say, okay, you didn't manage your spending well. However, if you have credit card bills that you have to pay each month because you pay living expenses with those, let's say groceries, maybe you did a cash advance to take care of your electricity, your rent or mortgage, then we can take that into consideration when negotiating with the IRS. Again, if you are tax compliant, the IRS is willing to have that conversation, but you have to make sure that you're prepared for the conversation. If you're not sure how to figure out what the IRS says you can pay, you need to check out the IRS standards, all right? It gives you the numbers for your area of the country, what the IRS says your allotment is for things like a rent and mortgage. And this is based on not only where you are in the country, but also the size of your family. Now, I have a list of things that you should have and review before negotiating with the IRS. I've compiled this into the back tax negotiation checklist, and you can find this on my website at americasfavoriteea.com. So if you can't pay your tax bill today, the IRS most certainly wants their money, but you want to make sure you file the return on time, investigate to figure out why you owe, and correct that, because we don't want it to be a slow leak and you keep running into the same issue. You want to make sure that you stay tax compliant. So we've updated that withholding with the W-4, or we figured out your estimated tax payments and now we're making those if you're a business owner. Then you want to figure out what the IRS says you can pay. And that does not mean call them and ask, because they want the payment in full. But you want to figure out according to those national standards and the other paperwork that needs to be filled out. Then you want to negotiate. And you remember, the people on the line are people, just like me and you. This is a privilege to negotiate, not a right. So you want to play nice. And I'm not saying that you need to kiss anybody's behind, but remember that they're people too. All right. Some of them will have empathy with you, or for you rather, but we have to show them that you're also a person and not there to yell and scream at them. Now, I'm going to be offering something that I actually haven't done for a while, and it's going to be a free training. All right. It's a webinar. I'm going to do it on February 23rd. And it is going to be a live webinar. It's not going to be a recording. So if you register, you're going to be with me in real time. And I'm going to walk you through how to negotiate with the IRS, even if you owe $100,000 and can't pay today. So you're going to want to make sure that you go to americasfavoriteea.com and go under the events section to sign up for this free webinar. If you have a family member that you know is in the same situation, make sure you also share it with them so they can sign up as well. I probably will do it live, probably 3-4 times in a row, but I'm not going to put this on a replay. You are not going to be able to find that even if you do sign up for the 23rd. So make sure that maybe you already have a plan set up for how you're going to pay off your taxes. Make sure you breathe, file the return on time, open all your tax notices, and respond, because communication is key. And get the help that you need, because back taxes shouldn't ruin your life. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen today. I'd like to thank Jim Ray Consulting Services for helping me get this message out to you. I hope you found the information helpful. Did you know 1 in 50 people have a tax problem? Please share this episode with your friends and family, because you never know who may need help. Again, thanks for listening. Hey, just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It provides a framework and possible solutions for solving your tax problems, but it is not legally binding. Please consult your tax professional regarding your specific tax situation.